Hello, everybody, and welcome to another virtual visit. I'm David Mustonen, Director of Communications for the Dearborn Public Schools. Joining us, as always, is our Superintendent, Dr. Glenn Maleyko. Glenn, how are you doing today?
Good. Doing very well, David. How about you? How are you doing today?
Good. And joining us on today's show is our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Tom Wall. Tom, how are you today?
Good, David. Nice to
Good.
see you, Glenn.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I'm going to get right into this. You know, the other day we had the governor's plan come out, and she really made it easy for school districts. There were a lot of details, 17 pages in her executive order, and that really set the framework for school districts to begin their work of how we are going to close out this school year. And I know, Dr. Maleyko, Glenn, you've been working with other superintendents, talking with them about how this plan's going to play out as well.
Yes, so we had a very good meeting with the Superintendent Association, a lot of clarification. I actually read through the document myself. I've also talked to our attorney. I will give the governor and her office a lot of credit for making a tough decision. I think I've said it before, is I can kind of relate, although I don't have the enormity of her responsibility. I can relate as far as Dearborn Schools of making a closure for snow day, and how, people will second guess the decision. And that's what she had to do. She had to make a decision, what she felt was in the best interest of the state, the entire state, and our students. And that's what she did. And so I respect that. I also give her and her office credit for the fact that there was a lot of provisions in there that do give a lot of direction and a lot of flexibility to districts. It also guarantees that we'll continue to get our funding, which is why we have our budget guy, Mr. Tom Wall, here today to talk about budget. But that was a real positive because, wanting to know whether we're going to continue to be able to operate the financial side of the district is a huge aspect. And so that order does give us some sort of certainty and clarity, despite the fact that we're disappointed that the year is over. Physically, the learning isn't over. And now we did get some reassurances budget-wise. So, Tom, I don't know if you wanted to add anything from a financial aspect as far as that plan and what's come out as far as our foundation state aid payments.
Yes, back in January, when we had our revenue consensus for the state, the profits and the money coming in from the governmental side was very positive. And when the governor plan came out in February, her proposal was very favorable to schools with more funding. Obviously, with these new COVID-19 issues that the whole world is having, we are going to see a large down drop in revenues available for the state going forward. So we're going to have to rework all our models going forward of what school funding will be going forward.
So I think it's important to make clear, though, that in the plan for the remainder of this year, our staff will continue to get paid and benefits and things like that. We're talking about future, correct?
Correct. So going forward, the plan requires us to pay all staff, our actual employees, their base compensation going forward. So that's what we're going to do. Yes. Now, there's a lot of nuances in the contract we're going to have to get into. That's a whole other discussion we can have on another day.
If I can also add that that's certainty as well, but it's also expected in order to get those state aid payments, there's a lot of provisions that you must comply with, including the fact that it is expected that people will be working. And there's a lot of provisions for essential workers and our ability to bring people into the buildings. So just for example, one of the provisions talks about cleaning buildings. So you have to bring your custodian staff in to clean buildings. So that would be our operations. And we appreciate the work that they do. So in order to get our state aid payments, that would be one example. Those that may, teachers and whatnot are expected to work. It's just that they're working from home virtually, just like a lot of administrators are doing. We can get exemptions for essential workers, but we also want to, do our part to keep everyone at home under the governor's current order. So we want to be careful with how we implement the essential worker provision. She does mandate in there that appropriate social distancing must occur if you're going physically into the buildings. So I also want to just mention too, appreciate the work that Tom, you and your team do. You always do a nice job with the budget. I think 2 years in a row, a meritorious budget award for the district. And you were looking at that real positive forecast of the budget, and all of a sudden this situation, came forward, and now you got to start forward thinking. So although we are good for this year, Tom, we will have to start making some cautious decisions for next year. Is that correct?
Correct. And the budget is for the entire district is over $300 million. So it's a lot of work to kind of get it going in one direction. Now, unfortunately, we've kind of have to scrap all our previous work and start over again. But I have a good, talented team that will put a lot of numbers together, and we'll make sure that the board's having an informed decision on a budget when they finally adopt it.
So David and Tom, I know you guys are in a lot of meetings with me. We're doing these Google Hangouts. The one thing that we can say, which is a comfort right now, the first thing is our thoughts and prayers again to those that may be dealing with direct COVID-19 and those who may have also passed away from the virus. Our thoughts and prayers go to them. But then there's indirect consequences, like a lot of people are getting laid off and not getting paid. We can be fortunate, at least in Dearborn schools, that we are continuing to get our employees are continuing to get paid. And so being fortunate that is occurring, and people should feel good about that. We're also able to continue to provide food opportunities for our parents and our families to come in and get the food. That's actually a requirement in the governor's order, is that in order to get state aid, but we were way on top of that because we started that weeks ago. And so I want to give credit to our food service department along with all the volunteers. And I know it's tough because they have to do appropriate social distancing, but that's the balance. People need to eat, so we need to get food. And my understanding is that we're giving away about 8,000 meals a day, Tom.
Correct. And don't forget all the volunteers that help us with that too.
Yes.
Actually assisting at each of the 7 sites.
Yeah, without the volunteers, it would be very difficult. They have to social distance. And we also have to there's a required Wayne County check every morning as well, with certain questions that we have to kind of screen people that come into work, is my understanding. Now, Tom, I also understand that schedule will change as well. We're going to be going to 3 days a week, I believe, or we have, and moved to that process of 3 days a week, correct?
Right. And we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Monday and Wednesday, we give out 2 days worth of meals, and Friday, 3 days worth of meals. Now, with the spring break, we're going to have to change that because Good Friday is a holiday. So we'll go Monday, Wednesday for 2 meals apiece, and Thursday we'll actually give out 4 meals for that day.
Wonderful. So again, our people are stepping up and doing that. So David, some of the other provisions I've seen in there are, we talked about it a little bit with the students, but it does give flexibility for districts as far as online learning and other ways of distance learning. So our team is currently working on that, and we're going to have a plan that we'll submit to the county superintendent, and we'll kind of work on that. The positive, though, is that we can start counting a lot of those days under this provision, under the governor's order, as soon as we get that plan up and running. We're also given about an additional 20 days of forgiveness that we can use with the snow days that we didn't use. So it does give security to us and the superintendents that we'll be good with making our 180 days with this governor's order. So I think that's a real positive. Another thing I saw in there is just mental support for students and families. Well, we started the hotline under Mr. Asaley and his team. So we do have that hotline that we talked about, I think maybe 2.5 weeks ago, Dave, on the show, we unleashed that. So there's a lot of things I think we're ahead of. And then again, the online learning, we're going to continue to meet, and we have a lot of meetings, and Google Hangouts is our format. And so I think we're ahead of the game, but we still got a lot of work to do. And there is going to be challenges, like meeting special education students, for example. Also, for those that may not have internet access. So we do have a lot of challenges that we still are going to face, but I'm confident our team is up for that challenge, and I'm confident in the great work I've seen of our teachers as well.
Absolutely. And I think, Tom, I just want to touch base on this a little bit. You mentioned it, we're a big district, $300 million budget a year. And although our buildings are closed, operationally, we still continue on. We still have bills to pay. We still have 2,700 people who need to get paid every 2 weeks. And your team's still doing that, correct?
Correct. And we're trying to do it as much as possible. Obviously, it's not easy. We have to change our processes and procedures because there's always has to be checks and balances when you're dealing with public money. So we're going through a lot of that. So they are doing a lot of work. Their normal 8 to 5 day doesn't exist as much, because we have to have phone calls, at 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. then latest, 10, 11 o'clock at night, just to make sure we're actually operating as best we can. So I give a lot of credit to them. They're working hard basically the whole day.
And our operations department as well, correct? As
Correct.
far as we still, eventually we're going to have to bring grounds people back to cut the grass and take care of all of those things as well.
Yep, and we have a lot of people we actually contract services with that are actually have contracts for the entire school year. And unfortunately, until now, we haven't been able to really promise them anything. But now that the governor has come out with a financial plan, we can at least start some of those discussions to make sure that we're giving our whole community an access to what we can do.
Well, and Glenn, I think, you've said it right off the top there was, right now we have to continue to do our part. We have to continue to stay at home. We have to, keep that social distancing and continue the shelter in place, because that is the most effective way to slow the spread of this virus. And we have to continue to do our part. There will come a time, we don't know when, maybe June, maybe later, that will start bringing all these things back. But until that point, it's really vital for us to follow the orders of what has been laid out by the governor, and that is to shelter in place.
Yes, so doing our part, and that's why we're doing these interviews and this show from home. We're also going to be running the next board meeting, as we've already mentioned, on the show from home. We put out that notice. And so the board and all of us are, leading by example and doing our part. And again, that's what we can do. We want to protect, as individuals, protect your families. Don't go out unless you absolutely have to. We know the essential reasons, and we're going to continue to do that same thing in the district. I also want to mention that as we're continuing with online learning, we also want to remind folks, and maybe David, we could do next week's show on internet safety and online, safety tips for parents. That would be something I just want to remind, parents to make sure that you're checking in on your children and making sure that they're doing appropriate things, or they're not getting caught up. Because there's also concerns from others that might be online. Now that more people are online all the time, there's more of the potential for issues or scams that are being sent out there. We never want our children to get in a compromising position. So.
Absolutely. That'll be a great topic for another show. Tom, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us. And Glenn, of course, as always, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
We want to thank everybody for taking a few minutes to stop by and visit with us. As always, we'll continue to share information and news and update everybody on all the current situations going on here in the new virtual Dearborn Public Schools. The buildings are closed, but the learning continues. Until next time, have a safe and pleasant day.